January 29th, 1986. This is Yulia Kruchinina, a schoolteacher in Delnogorsk, a remote mining settlement deep in the Soviet Far East, wedged between mountain ranges not far from Vladivostok. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, she stepped outside her home. The air was cold and quiet. She looked up as from behind the hill rose a UFO that she described as a flying yellow ball, drifting silently across the horizon, trailing a beam of light behind it like a flashlight. As she moved closer toward the craft, the beam became darker and of uniform thickness. She observed the craft there for around 30 seconds, unable to look away, before it eventually disappeared behind the ridge.
A final question, what do you think it was? Any idea?
A UFO.
She nor the town knew it yet, but this was just the beginning. Around 7:55 p.m. the same day, the sun had already sunk behind the mountains, leaving Delnogorsk in deepening shadow. The streets were quiet. Factory workers made their way home from the Del polymetal plant, and a few children lingered near the streetlights. From the horizon, a sphere emerged, drifting silently across the sky. Where it had been yellow in the morning, now it glowed a deep red, pulsing as it moved with deliberate motion. Yevgeny Serebrov, then a fifth grader, now a PhD candidate in physics and mathematics, watched from the street, mesmerized by the object's strange flight. The ball flew parallel to the ground, rising and falling several times before our eyes. Others across town, miners returning from shifts, teachers, families on their way home, reported seeing the same glowing orb, some describing it as half the size of the moon. Finally, the sphere reached the hills. Height 611, also known as Izvestkivaya Mountain, loomed ahead. That's when locals describe a pecking motion occurred, a sudden downward strike as the UFO descended sharply, plunging into the mountainside while the crowd stood frozen, unable to look away. Sergei Olkhovoy was also there that night. His recollection was later published in Trud, a Russian newspaper, in 2003. I saw a red ball. There was no sound, sparks, or smoke trail as it flew. It moved parallel, in a straight line, without any zigzags. Sasha Sinitsky and I ran toward our house. When we reached the entrance, we saw it begin to fall, hit the top of the mountain, bounced a short distance, and landed. There was a flash. Then it burned for a long time. Sergei's mother also came out to check and told investigators something had been burning on the hill for over an hour. But that wasn't what everyone saw. This is V.M. Koretko, editor of the regional newspaper Trud, who was actually at the hill at the time, stated, "Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something falling onto the rock. There was a dull thud, not a rolling sound, but quite powerful. The sound of the impact lasted a split second. There was a flash, a large white-red flame. It seemed as if something there had caught fire. The ball was about a meter in diameter. The flames were humming. I watched all this for about 5 minutes. The fire burned for 1 or 2 minutes, then stopped." Accounts vary. Some say the fire burned for an hour, others just 2 minutes. Some describe the object bouncing multiple times, up to 6 ricochets, while others insist it landed in a single impact. The stories don't line up perfectly, but they all agree on one thing. Something crashed into Height 611 that night, and it burned. This is Vladimir Kondakov, a mechanic at Dolnogorsk Food Supply, speaking decades later in Lipetsk Week, another Russian newspaper. The ball was flying low, and it seemed like it would knock off part of the Del polymetal factory's chimney. It was round, without any protrusions or indentations. It appeared to be made of metal and was the color of slightly hot stainless steel. I thought it was some kind of military shell. I didn't hear any sounds. I saw it fall high up, but I didn't hear any sounds either. The ground caught fire at that spot. Multiple eyewitnesses compared the fire at the impact site to a welding torch or a short circuit in a power line.
In the first days after the crash, officials were slow to react. Word of the strange fireball spread quickly through Dolnogorsk, but no one from the local administration or emergency services seemed eager to climb the slope that night. By February 2nd, 4 days after the event, curiosity had overtaken caution, and a small group of locals decided to investigate for themselves. Leading the expedition was Gennady Olkovoy, father of Sergei, joined by his sister, Yekaterina Lysina, and several others, all determined to see what had really fallen on height 611. What they found at the suspected crash site was strange: a charred stump, a shallow depression, and branches sheared by fragments, but no large debris, nothing obvious. They began collecting whatever they could: melted metal droplets, stones, pieces of tree stump, and brought their treasure to the local history club, led by biology teacher Valery Viktorovich Dvuzhilny. When Dvuzhilny examined the remains, some material looked like soft metal that several acids had no effect on. They consulted V.V. Berlizov, a senior specialist who had been part of the 1947 Sikhote-Alin meteorite expedition, and scientists from Vladivostok and Khabarovsk reportedly calculated the falling speed at about 15 meters per second, far slower than a normal meteorite. The burn area was clearly defined. A bush at the edge remained completely untouched, while the rock had cracked and turned coal black, and the soil was mixed with ash. In total, they recovered about 30 grams of dark, solidified droplets, most between 0.5 millimeter and 2 millimeters, with a few larger ones measuring 3 to 5 millimeters. Laboratories at the Bohr and Alpoli Metal Production Associations were reportedly asked to analyze the samples, and the results were incredible. The smaller droplets were apparently a lead-based alloy containing multiple elements, including rare earths such as zirconium, lanthanum, yttrium, and praseodymium. This composition confused scientists, especially since none of these elements are naturally present in local rocks, and the composition varied from droplet to droplet. The larger balls were reportedly made of iron, chromium, nickel, and aluminum, and were reportedly hard enough to require a diamond cutter to cut. Surface examination revealed that the metal had an amorphous structure rather than the expected crystalline one, something normally produced in labs by rapidly quenching a high-temperature melt. How such a structure could have formed on bare rock remains unexplained. Some of these fragments still exist today, preserved in museums and analyzed in laboratories, while the crash site itself remains, topped by a prop UFO, a stark reminder of the fireball that Dolnogorsk could never forget.